world's last great battleships, yet still she fought on. The name Bismarck has become ironic. A battleship of such proportion, such speed and power,
carrying more than 2,000 men that day, along with secrets and treasures that the world would never find, the Bismarck battleship came to its fatal end.
At 10:20, the demolition charges were blown at around the same time as HMS close in and sink Bismarck with her torpedoes.
Sinking into the depths of the Atlantic, never to be disturbed until recently. The truth, the Nazi treasure on Bismarck battleship was real, and it's far worse than we thought. This discovery raises chilling questions about all the things we thought we knew about the Bismarck. Join us in this video as we unravel the shocking secrets and treasures found on the sunken Nazi battleship Bismarck. Searching for the Bismarck treasure. For decades, the wreck of Bismarck laid silent in the deep, yet questions echoed above the waves. What was really aboard Germany's greatest warship? On paper, her mission was simple: hunt Allied convoys and cripple Britain's lifeline across the Atlantic. But buried in naval records and whispered through wartime testimony are cracks in the story. Inconsistencies, gaps, secrets. One of the most enduring theories is that Bismarck was headed to a secret rendezvous. Scattered documents and fragmented reports suggest she was to meet a German U-boat somewhere in the Atlantic. Why? No one agrees. Some claim it was a transfer of critical materials, nuclear components, rare metals, even experimental weapons technology. Others believe it was something more delicate, an extraction point. That leads to another, darker theory. Passengers, high-ranking SS officers, or scientists too valuable to lose, hidden deep in secure compartments far from the regular crew. Their destination? Perhaps South America, where Nazi networks were already laying foundations for a second chance. Or perhaps another Axis-controlled zone to continue research and plan for a long war. No names were ever confirmed, but Allied intercepts at the time hinted at high-value personnel being moved across the Atlantic. And then there is the puzzle of Bismarck's last transmissions. After she was crippled, she broke protocol and sent a strange series of messages, encrypted, irregular, and against every rule of radio silence. Those signals were enough for the British to track her down. But why risk it? Some historians whisper sabotage, that someone aboard Bismarck, perhaps a spy, perhaps even a German dissenter, was sending covert signals. If true, it means that the ship's doom wasn't just delivered from above, but plotted from within. So, what was inside the Bismarck? Why does the conviction of a treasure aboard continue to grow? Keep watching to find out. The rumors were correct. There was treasure on the Bismarck. Individually, the theories seem far-fetched, but taken together they point to a chilling possibility. Bismarck wasn't just a battleship. She may have been carrying something capable of rewriting the course of history. When oceanographer Robert Ballard, famous for finding the Titanic, first located the wreck in 1989, the technology of the time allowed only limited exploration. The Atlantic's crushing depths, violent currents, and the wreck's twisted enormity kept much of her hidden. What Ballard and his team did glimpse, though, raised eyebrows. Sections of the hull remained eerily intact. Compartments were sealed so tightly they seemed almost untouchable. Some parts of the ship looked reinforced in ways that didn't match a vessel built purely for naval combat. And with no reliable cargo manifest to compare against, the mystery deepened. Over the years, rumors swirled. Why were certain areas so heavily secured? Why did related records stay classified for nearly 80 years? What exactly was Germany so desperate to keep hidden in the Atlantic's cold grave? Then came 2025, a new deep-sea mission, officially billed as a routine archaeological survey, was launched by a European coalition. But leaked defense briefings later revealed the truth. This wasn't about archaeology. The expedition had a set of precise coordinates and a singular directive: get inside Bismarck's lower decks. Armed with next-generation submersibles, pressure-proof drones and cutting lasers, the team reached compartments no one had ever touched. What they found, according to insiders, stunned even hardened officials. Sealed vaults, armored storage units, bolted directly into the forward hold of the Bismarck. The whispers were right. There was treasure aboard the Nazi battleship. Only it wasn't gold, and it wasn't art. It was something far worse. What was this scary, almost deadly treasure? Let's see. The scary treasures found in the Bismarck. When the vaults were remotely accessed, their contents defied belief. Stacks of gold bars glinted under the submersible's lights. Jewel-encrusted ornaments, chalices, and religious relics, looted from across occupied Europe, were packed in crates as if waiting to be shipped. Investigators later traced several items to museums and private collections in Poland, France, and Austria, long presumed destroyed or lost forever. Among them, an emerald-studded reliquary believed stolen from a monastery in Kiev, and a cache of Roman coins listed as missing from the Louvre since 1940. But the treasure was only the beginning. Beneath the glittering artifacts lay steel canisters stamped with the Reich Eagle and cryptic numeric codes. Inside, hundreds of pages of documents, astonishingly preserved in watertight cases. Analysts say the contents included encrypted cables between Nazi high command and sympathetic foreign embassies, detailed maps of potential post-war supply routes, and even schematics for weapons systems that were never deployed. Some appeared to outline primitive missile guidance systems and early biological warfare concepts, drafts annotated in Hitler's own hand. And then came the real bombshell. Among the papers was a file allegedly marked Sudamerica 1945 to 1950. Its implications sent shockwaves through both historians and intelligence circles. The documents suggested that Nazi leadership was not only preparing for survival in South America, but actively coordinating the transfer of wealth, technology, and personnel across the Atlantic. Argentina, in particular, appeared repeatedly, alongside references to safe houses, coded financial accounts, and encrypted shipping logs, eerily consistent with post-war escape routes later known as the rat lines. Officials have refused to release the full inventory, but sources confirm that several crates were quietly recovered from the wreck and immediately classified, spirited away to undisclosed facilities in both Europe and the United States. What they contained remains sealed, perhaps forever. Was this all there was to the Bismarck, or there was more? Let's find out. More shocking discoveries. Within the Bismarck. Other artifacts are now undergoing forensic testing to confirm their origins and determine whether they can be traced back to rightful owners. But one truth has already emerged. The Bismarck wasn't just a warship. It was a vault, a courier, a lifeboat for a regime preparing for extinction, and perhaps a rebirth elsewhere. And here's the unsettling thought. If this much was hidden inside one wreck, what else might still lie scattered across the ocean floor, sealed away with the ruins of the Third Reich? The confirmation of treasure aboard the Bismarck has sent quiet shockwaves through governments, intelligence services, and historical institutions worldwide. For more than 80 years, the ship had been remembered as a cautionary tale of naval warfare, hubris, technology, and destruction. Now, it's something more. Evidence of a shadow operation the Nazi leadership hoped would outlive their empire's collapse. In the wake of the 2025 dive, leaked communications began circulating among journalists and researchers. None were intended for public release. They revealed that intelligence agencies are already working to cross-reference the Bismarck's recovered documents with wartime shipping logs, intercepted communications, and missing persons files tied to Nazi fugitives. And then came the most troubling detail. Several of the documents explicitly referenced South America, not just as a safe haven for fleeing officers, but as an active staging ground for post-war operations. The files listed bank accounts, aliases, codes, and names. Some were already familiar to historians. Others were new, never-before-seen identities. One list, partially redacted before it leaked, included more than 30 ships believed to have slipped out of Europe in the final months of the war. Bismarck was only one of them. Even among seasoned intelligence officials, suspicion is growing that immense wealth. Sensitive documents and key personnel were quietly moved out of Germany before its final collapse. Some of that traffic, according to the files, may have been carried by the mysterious U-boat fleet. Other portions of the Reich's wealth likely slipped out through neutral countries, laundered into private accounts, hidden inside fake charities, or funneled into corporations that survived long after the war. The Bismarck was supposed to be the richest and most powerful German battleship. How did it get destroyed? And why? Keep watching to find out. The battle that sank the Bismarck. May the 24th, 1941, the icy waters of the Denmark Strait between Greenland and Iceland were still, too still. British patrols had swept this corridor for days, certain that somewhere in the fog, the German giants were moving. At 5:37 that morning, aboard HMS Suffolk, radar lit up with two massive contacts. There they were, Bismarck and Prince Eugen, slicing through fog and shadow. The chase was over. The enemy was found. The Royal Navy scrambled into action. HMS Hood, the pride of Britain, symbol of its naval power, and HMS Prince of Wales, barely past its training trials, surged forward to intercept. Orders were clear. Engage immediately. No retreat, but this was a gamble. Hood was a battlecruiser. Fast, heavily armed, but built for a different era. Her design sacrificed armor for speed. She was a relic of World War I. Bismarck was no relic. She was modern, engineered for destruction, a floating fortress built to crush anything in her path. And now, the two would meet in the cold, grey waters of the North Atlantic. At 5:52, the guns thundered. 15 miles apart, the first salvos were exchanged. The British fired first. HMS Hood and HMS Prince of Wales trained their guns on the leading ship, believing it was the Bismarck. They were wrong. Their target was actually Prince Eugen. The Germans responded with ruthless precision. Shells screamed through the sky, crashing into the sea with towering geysers of water. Each near miss shook the British ships, tightening the knot of tension on deck. The Prince of Wales faltered almost immediately. Mechanical failures crippled her main gun turrets, leaving her firing at barely half capacity. She wasn't ready for a battle of this scale, but retreat was not an option. At 6 o'clock, just 8 minutes into the fight, disaster struck. A shell from the Bismarck found its mark. It punched through Hood's thin deck armor, ripped into the aft magazine, and ignited her stored ammunition. The result was catastrophic. In an instant, Hood was torn apart. A massive fireball split the sky as the ship broke in two. Debris rained into the sea. Of her crew of 1,419 men, only 3 survived. The pride of the Royal Navy was gone, sunk in under 9 minutes. Aboard the Bismarck, the reaction was cold, professional. No celebration. They had drawn blood, and they knew the fight was far from over. The Prince of Wales, battered and outgunned, refused to break off.
Bismarck has been hit during the encounter with HMS Hood and the Prince of Wales and requires repairs. Lufthansa has made the call to go to an occupied port in France, called Brest, against Lindemann's advice to go and turn back to head to Norway.
She pressed on, her shots hammering the Bismarck. One shell tore into the German battleship's bow, rupturing fuel tanks and flooding compartments. It wasn't a knockout, but it was a serious wound. The damage limited the Bismarck's range and speed. She could no longer roam freely across the Atlantic. Now, Captain Ernst Lindemann and Admiral Günther Lütjens, two very different men, faced a decision that would define the fate of the ship and everyone on board. Admiral Günther Lütjens saw the mission as political and absolute. He believed in orders, cold, unambiguous, break into the Atlantic and smash Allied shipping. Despite the damage, he wanted to push on. Why? What is the true story behind Admiral Günther Lütjens and his defiance in the face of death? Let's find out. The man who commanded the greatest battleship, Admiral Günther Lütjens. Johann Günther Lütjens, born in 1889, was a German admiral whose career stretched across more than 3 decades and both world wars. He is remembered most for his role in World War II as the commander of the battleship Bismarck during its dramatic push into the Atlantic in 1941, a mission that cost him his life when the ship went down. Lutyens joined the Imperial German Navy in 1907 and fought against the British during World War I, working his way up to lieutenant. After the war, he stayed in the Navy, now called the Reichsmarine, and earned a solid reputation as a sharp and reliable staff officer. When the Nazis took power in 1933 and reshaped the Navy into the Kriegsmarine, Lutyens' career advanced quickly. His close ties with commanders Erich Raeder and Karl Dönitz, combined with his skill, landed him command of the cruiser Karlsruhe. By 1937, he was promoted to Konteradmiral, Rear Admiral. He first made his mark in World War II by leading destroyer operations in the North Sea during Germany's invasion of Poland in 1939. The following year, now a Vice Admiral, he briefly commanded Germany's surface fleet during the invasion of Denmark and Norway, Operation Weserübung. By September 1940, he had become fleet commander and was promoted to admiral. In early 1941, Lutyens masterminded Operation Berlin, sending German battleships into the Atlantic to disrupt British merchant convoys and support U-boat operations. It was a tactical success. His ships covered 18,000 miles, the longest run by a German battle group at the time, before docking in occupied France. A few months later came his most famous and final mission, Operation Rheinübung. Leading the Bismarck and the cruiser, Prince Eugen Lutyens set out to raid Allied shipping once again. The mission quickly unraveled. Near Iceland, his force was intercepted, and in the Battle of the Denmark Strait on May 27, 1941, the mighty battleship was sunk, taking Lutyens and most of his crew with it. Decades later, West Germany honored his name. In 1967, the Bundesmarine launched a destroyer called Lutyens, ensuring his legacy lived on in naval history. How did the British sink the Bismarck? Keep watching to find out. Sinking the Bismarck. The decision to run for France made tactical sense, yet it also introduced big logistical problems. The shortest route home cut through ever more dangerous waters while British forces repositioned. So why risk it? Contemporary German reports made things more puzzling. Bismarck carried less fuel than expected for a prolonged raiding campaign and only partial ammunition reserves. Odd for an operation that was supposed to last weeks. Why take the ship to sea with so little? Why gamble with reduced stores and patchy munitions? Those questions would follow the ship to the bottom and haunt historians ever after. Post-war investigators later uncovered fragments of documents suggesting that parts of the Bismarck's lower decks, especially in the forward compartments, were off-limits. Restricted access wasn't unusual on a warship, but in this case, the compartments were sealed even from senior officers. That detail, combined with the sudden detachment of Prince Eugen and the frantic push for occupied France, raised unsettling questions. Was the Bismarck carrying something that absolutely could not fall into Allied hands? Because this wasn't just about repairs, it was about control. The Bismarck had to escape. She had to reach the coast. The Royal Navy, however, would never allow it. British ships, submarines and aircraft surged into motion. They didn't yet know her destination, but they knew she was crippled and time was running out. The chase had begun. And it wasn't only vengeance for the Hood. There was something more, an urgency that official communiques never fully explained. A sense that whatever the Bismarck carried could not, under any circumstances, be allowed to reach the French coast. How did success come for the British? Could there have been survivors from the Bismarck? Keep watching to find out. The relentless pursuit. Over 50 British warships joined the hunt. Cruisers, destroyers, aircraft carriers, even submarines. The Royal Air Force swept the skies with long-range patrol planes. Radar stations from Iceland to Ireland were locked in. The net was drawing tight, yet for nearly 2 days, the Bismarck simply vanished.
We're still talking about staggering distances here. They concluded that there were 3 possible passages, but gambled that the Germans would choose the furthest from Britain between Iceland and Greenland, known as the Denmark Strait.
After the battle in the Denmark Strait, she slipped into the grey immensity of the North Atlantic. In her absence, rumours spread faster than her wake. Where was she? What was she carrying? Then, on the evening of May the 26th, fate intervened. At 10:30 p.m., a Catalina flying boat spotted her roughly 700 miles west of France, heading in a straight line for Saint-Nazaire. If she reached that port, the massive dry docks would shelter her, and German control over the French coast would lock her safely away. The race was on. The clock was ticking. If Bismarck reached France, she could be repaired. She could fight again. The Royal Navy had only one chance to stop her. From the deck of HMS Ark Royal, wave after wave of Fairey Swordfish torpedo bombers took to the air. They were relics of another era. Slow, outdated biplanes that looked almost laughable against the most powerful battleship in the world. But their weakness was their strength. Flying low and slow, they slipped beneath the precision of the Bismarck's anti-aircraft defenses. As dusk settled and weather worsened, the attack began. The sky lit with flak as Bismarck unleashed everything she had. The Swordfish danced through the chaos, dipping, weaving, refusing to break off. At dawn, on May the 27th, the Royal Navy moved in for the kill. Battleships King George V and Rodney opened fire at range, their shells tearing through Bismarck's superstructure. Her return fire was furious but scattered, her gunners unable to steady their aim without maneuverability. Within half an hour, her main batteries were silent. Her decks were burning wreckage, twisted steel and flame. Yet the barrage continued. For over an hour, British shells and torpedoes pounded her without mercy. Destroyers swept in close, firing torpedoes that ripped open her hull. Seawater rushed in. The great battleship shuddered, broken. At 10:40 a.m., the order came. Scuttle the ship. Explosives detonated, valves opened, compartments flooded. At 10:39 a.m., Bismarck rolled, her massive frame slipping beneath the Atlantic. Out of more than 2,200 men aboard, only 114 were pulled from the freezing sea. The rest vanished into the depths. The most feared warship in Hitler's navy was gone. The Royal Navy had its revenge. The Atlantic was once again under British control. German surface raiders would never threaten it the same way again. So, what do you think about the Nazi treasure found on the Bismarck battleship? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.